Meet Bob Olson. Bob's the author of Answers About the Afterlife and the host of Afterlife TV, a private investigator who began investigating life after death in 1999. Bob now records his interviews with experts, authors, and people who've had extraordinary experiences so he can share it all with you. Enjoy the show.
Okay, here we are with Danielle MacKinnon from DanielleMacKinnon.com. MacKinnon spelled M-A-C-K-I-N-N-O-N. You know, I'm sure a lot of people get that wrong, right, Danielle?
Yep, they get it wrong. My old last name was a lot easier.
What was that?
It was 4 letters, C-O-V-E.
That was a lot easier. Anyways, welcome to Afterlife TV. We really appreciate you being here to answer this question that so many people have, which is, you know, do our pets go to the afterlife? Why don't we get right to it? We'll start with that broad question. You can answer it however you want, and then we'll sort of break it apart as we go along. How would you answer that? Because I'm sure this is a question you get quite often by email and you know, from your clients. What happens to the animals that we love when they die? Do they just disappear? Poof, you know, no more?
Yep, disappear, poof. I don't really have a job.
That's it. That's it. Well, thank you for coming, Danielle. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you another time.
Right, okay, bye.
Bye. No, seriously, you know, obviously, there's a lot of people who believe in life after death, but they think of it in terms of people. But when it comes to animals, they're not really sure what to think.
I really do get asked this question all the time. That people want to know that their animal who passed over is safe, or is happy, or is okay. And the best way I can answer it is basically to give you a yes. There is a place where animals spend their time after they've passed. I don't know if we can exactly call it time, but they spend their time there, and we're able to connect with them. I'm able to ask them how they're doing. They're able to talk from that place. You know, it's actually funny. I have animal communication students because I teach people how to do animal communication, and a lot of the time I'll have them practice with an animal, but I won't tell them the animal has crossed over.
Yeah.
Because everybody freaks out. They're like, I can't talk to a dog who's crossed, you know, so I don't tell them. I don't, and it saves a lot of grief, actually, because people get really worried.
Yeah.
And everybody is able to connect with that animal on the other side. So it's pretty cool. The other neat thing about that is I'll ask people, okay, when they're connecting with an animal on the other side, I'll say, what's it look like where they live? What's their everyday existence like? And they will describe, for dogs, they describe this like, literally like dog utopia. There's big, huge logs and trees and lots of food and water and bunny. And like, it's like literally like you would think in Bambi, you know, the movie Bambi, when everything looks all nice and sweet. It's kind of like
right.
Dog heaven. And people get really comforted by that.
Yeah.
But what I tell them about that is that it's really just a layer that the animals use to communicate that they're safe and happy on the other side. Because really underneath that layer of the trees and the logs and the rainbows and things like that is just a beautiful home light feeling. And I've talked with animals about that, and that's the truth. That's like the essence of where they are, but it's very hard for us as humans to understand.
Okay. All right, we'll get more into detail about that in a minute. Why don't, you know, can you draw the line for us, though? I mean, we talk about pets, and usually people think cats and dogs, and I don't know how far they go, maybe horses. Where do we draw the line as far as what animals go to the afterlife? You know, what about insects and birds and fish? Where do we draw the line, if anywhere?
There is no line. There is no line. It's, in my experience, it's every animal, every insect, every fish. It's everybody with a consciousness can cross to the other side and can actually still be connected to and communicated with. There is no line. I've not been able to not reach someone. I've kind of connected in and had an animal be like, yeah, I'm not interested in talking. I crossed over 30 years ago. You know, I'm all set, or this isn't the right time for this person to connect with me, etc. But animals can All animals. I mean, that's cheetahs and zebras and, amoeba. All right, but I haven't tried to communicate with an amoeba.
Yeah, and I've never had a pet amoeba either. So,
Right.
but spiders, I'm sure spiders are the one exception, right? Because I have no problem, Well, we won't even get into that. Listen, me and
Ticks.
spiders, I have issues with spiders.
For me, it's ticks. I have a hard time with ticks.
Okay, all right. So no love lost with the ticks if they're not going to the afterlife. But no, I get it. So all animals are going to the afterlife. So does this mean then that all animals have souls? And if so, how would you define soul? What does it mean to have a soul?
I would define soul as that part of the energy that stays intact even when the body leaves. So when the body has deteriorated or stopped functioning, there is this energy that continues on that has a certain signature to it. And that I define as the soul. And we know people have souls, but every animal has a soul as well. Every insect, every mammal, every bird, they all have souls. And they all have souls that work in a slightly different way than our human souls.
Oh, interesting. Do you want to get into that, or is that a little too in depth for an interview like this? How would they be different?
Well, animal souls, and when I say animal souls, I mean animals, mammals, birds, insects. I mean the whole deal.
Yep.
Anything that's not human. They have a purpose in coming here, and their purpose is to teach humans.
Ah.
So whereas humans came here, we're here, our souls are here to be enlightened, to become a high vibrating, beautiful, loving soul, to learn our lessons. Animal souls are here to help teach humans their lessons. So the overall purposes between the two souls are different, but they work together.
Interesting. All right. There's another thing that I do want to go back on, because I just want to work our way up. Anybody that this might be new for will work their way up to that in a moment. So is there a difference between when you're thinking of it? Is there a difference between a soul and a spirit?
A spirit, to me, I don't really use the word spirit that
Okay.
often, because spirit so often includes the personality along with the ego, along with all of the pluses and minuses that came along with that personality.
Okay.
If you think of like a spirit that's here, if you're connecting with a spirit, you might connect with your deceased loved grandmother, with your grandmother, and she might come in and say, "What are you doing seeing that man?"
Right.
And so she's got all of her opinions. She's not really working at that higher level.
Yep.
So when I'm talking about souls, I'm talking about that higher, deeper level that we often as humans don't go to. We humans tend to stay in more of that ego-y area, where we're more concerned with the everyday details, but the soul is more concerned with the big picture and the evolution of that being.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. I never really thought of it in that way. I love that description of it. So yeah, when we're talking about spirit, we're talking about really a specific ego, really, if you think about it. The spirit of who they were when they were here. As a soul, though, it incorporates all the lifetimes that being might have experienced, right?
Yeah.
What evidence do you have then? You discussed some of it, but if you give some personal examples of evidence that you have that animals are in the afterlife. Because there's going to be some people who will say that you might be, it might be like ESP. You're picking up on the memories of the person that you're giving the reading to, that sort of a thing. How do you know that you're actually connecting with this animal in the afterlife? And give us some examples of what has happened when you're communicating with an animal in the afterlife.
How do I know that I'm connecting with an animal in the afterlife and it's not a memory or ESP about it? Actually, the biggest way is faith. My intention is to connect with the animal, and this is what I teach my students. I want to connect with the animal, so I'm going to connect with the animal. If I spend my time worrying that I'm connecting with a memory, I'm more likely to connect with a memory. It's definitely, you bring up a legitimate thing, but I teach people to have faith in their intention, and that their intention is everything. So I mean, there's not a way. A memory is going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's going to be from the person's point of view, whereas the information that I'm getting from the animal is going to be specifically from that animal's point of view. So there would be a difference. If the memory almost matches too well with the human's point of view, it would be like if it was a memory, and this really doesn't happen. I mean, because of the intention thing. But if it was a memory, let's say the memory would be, I would be sitting at a dinner table eating food, handing the food down to the dog. If it was from the dog would say, I loved being at the dinner table looking up for the food. You know, I'm going to get it from that animal's point of view, not the human's point of view.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't run into it very often, and my students don't either, because I teach them to have that trust in themselves, that just say what you want to receive. I want to receive from the animal, and that you do. It's not a. I know you with how your logical mind thinks. It's an easy thing to come up with that it's a mistake that would happen, but it's not a frequent. It doesn't happen. It's not common at all.
Yeah. Now, and I know this happens with people, but I'm not sure about animals. Do they ever give you information maybe the person isn't aware of either? So for instance, I know with people, I'll use a people example. Maybe you can use an animal example. You know, a person in spirit comes through to a medium and tells them, we'll say, about something that happened, like another person died, that the sitter, the client, knows, but that client wasn't aware that person had died yet. They're finding out through the spirit, through the medium. Has that ever happened with you? So
it happens all the time.
Really?
But not in that way. And I think the difference is because what you're talking about is human to human, or human to person on the other side, and what I'm talking about is human to animal soul. Right. And since the animal souls are concerned with the big picture, and they're concerned with all this evolution of our human souls, the way they would deliver the message, let's say I was working with a woman and her dog, and the dog would say something to me like, you know, there's an imbalance in the relationship, and your boyfriend's attention isn't all focused on you, it's focusing other places as well. You know, the dog would be telling me that, rather than your husband's having an affair or your boyfriend's having an affair, because they deliver all the messages with love. I think when you're actually dealing with people and with deceased loved people, they sometimes the message gets delivered a little bit more alarmingly or dramatically, whereas you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
You see it on TV.
Right, yeah, right.
But the animals choose to deliver the message in a way that could actually help heal the person through the information. So it happens all the time that the person learns new information about themselves or about their life or about their children, but it happens in such a way that it doesn't set the person off like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
Because the animals are so concerned with making sure everything results in a forward evolution.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You know, I bring up the question because I know there's skeptics out there, or people who are even slightly skeptical, and you know, the ESP thing is something that often comes up with skeptics. You know, the medium or the psychic is reading the person's mind. Actually, I don't even know. I've never seen that. I've never actually seen anybody who has been able to read my mind. I've tested hundreds of psychics and mediums. Nobody has been able to read my mind.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You know, I'm like actually pretty super psychic. I can't do that.
Exactly.
Like what?
I haven't met anybody who can, and yet, you know, it's a typical. It's like, you know, skeptics love to go there. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, just because it's hard for some people, you know, it's easier for us to think that we can read one another's minds than to think that we can actually communicate with someone in the spirit world, because to even believe in the spirit world is a giant leap from that, you know. Yeah. All right, but getting back to the animals and the afterlife, I'm just curious. I know you've been with animals as they've been passing during a natural death.
Yeah.
Sad in some ways, although I experienced it about 1.5 years ago with a cat, and it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Are there stages that take place at the time of death if it's a natural death? And what are those stages that they sort of go through?
That's a great question. And you notice that when you asked me, when you started talking about this, rather than getting all serious, I noticed I was doing a big smile.
Yeah,
yeah. And it's because
and you have a nice smile, so that works out
well, that's good. It's because my experiences with death, with animals passing over, is so positive that for me, when I think of an animal crossing over, I actually feel good. Yeah. So we're going to start talking about the phases and how this all works. And it's, for me, on the inside, I'm like, oh my God, I love talking about this because it's so cool what happens. There's a few things. One is an animal always knows that they're going to cross over. Always. They always know. They'll know weeks beforehand. I've met so many people, though, who've come to me and said, well, I talked to an animal communicator, and they said that my horse said it was an accident. And I have not experienced that. What I've experienced is, the animal says, yep, it was my time. I'd completed my work with my human, and it was ready to move on. So they choose the time. They choose the method as well, meaning if it's going to be fast, if it's going to be slow, if it's going to be long and drawn out, if it's going to be through a disappearance. All of these things are based on what they feel will work best for their human in terms of helping their human evolve. Oh. On top of that, now we get to the point where they're actually going to cross over. A lot of animals will, if they're with me, they'll ask me to, actually, let me change that. If the animal's with me because the human wants them to be with me, the animal will give the human a list of things that they, that would help them to cross over. Okay. I'd like to be in this place, or have this person here, or hear this music, or be in this position, or go to the bed, or not. But what I found is those things are great, but if the animal didn't have them, it wasn't the end of the world. Because I've talked to animals who both were able to make requests and have the requests granted, yep, and made requests and didn't have the requests granted, and both were happy, both were fine on the other side, both totally understood it. It feels like making requests is more of a like something to help them bond and feel closer to and help their human along as, yep, they cross over. Right. So now we get to the part where they're actually going to cross over, and what it depends on the death, how it works. Yep. If it's something like a car accident, so the cat runs out in front of the car, in my experience, the animals have always told me, oh, I left my body just before impact. I was right outside my body then. Or when I got scared in the house and jumped up and screeched and then ran out the door, when I screeched, I left my body and then I got hit by the car. So they're really not experiencing the pain that we see go on. If it's a long, slow death, such as an accident that results in an injury that kills them, or if it's a disease, yep, they will stay in their body until their body is no longer comfortable to be in. And then their energy will kind of hang in, let's say half in, half out, tethered to the body, kind of like a balloon. Yeah. Which is a really cool thing. And then I've had a lot of people, I've helped them kind of say, all right, for a natural death, all right, let's help this animal. And they kind of cut that little tether, because the, yeah, animals say, yes, I'm ready to go. They cut that tether, and then the animal's able to cross over more quickly and easily. Interesting. How would you cut that tether? I mean, is it just, telling them it's okay to go, or? That is one way to do it. Really speaking with them and saying, it's okay, I release you, have a great time, I'll see you on the other side. Or you can visualize the energy as kind of like a little balloon above the animal, and just visualize using little scissors and cutting that tether. But you don't want to do it unless you really feel like, it's time. I feel like he wants to pass on his own. It's got to be the right moment. It's not like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But some people will do that. I've had clients who found out their dog had cancer, and they were so worried that she was going to suffer, that the smallest thing happened, they were like, okay, we're going to put her to sleep because we don't want her to suffer. Yeah. And, and it was fine with her. But when I asked her about it, she said, well, it was fine. I could have gone on longer. She planned it, but at the same time, they had their own plan. Yeah, I understand that, because
All right, I went through that with my cat Pesky. The name is Pesky, 22 years old. Certainly had lived a long life. And but I remember, most of us, it's one thing if we're going through pain, but it's even harder to watch someone else that you love going through pain. So it was obvious, we knew, we woke up that morning, we could tell this was the day she was on her way out. And my biggest concern was, first of all, I didn't want to move her to bring her to the vet, and because I thought that would just make matters worse, a lot of anxiety. Yep. But then at the same time, I was worried that she was in a lot of pain because, organs are shutting down and stuff. That was obvious. And when I say obvious, I mean, she was fine. It's just, I guess that's what I was projecting, was that her organs were shutting down. So it wasn't obvious. Bad word. But I was concerned that she was in pain and that it might be better for her if she were helped along. In the end, I was glad that we did it the way we did it. She died on my lap, and me and my wife Melissa had kept putting her on each other's lap for a long time. This lasted a few hours till she finally went. But that was a question that went through our mind. Did we make the wrong choice? I was always worried that it would get so painful and I would have to, be with her while she was in all this pain, knowing that I made the wrong choice. For me, that didn't happen. I'm sure that's happened at times where there's probably more pain involved. And so that question goes through your head. Let's talk about that. Let's talk euthanasia. When is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate? You kind of touched upon it, but how does someone make that choice?
I'm going to tell the story of a client who, she had a dog. He was 17 and he was very, very, very sick. And she knew it was time, but at the same time, she just wasn't ready. So he definitely had physical pain, but like I said, remember, he's not quite in his body, so the suffering isn't really as much as we would think.
Yeah.
So she let it go on a really long time, like I think it was 3 or 4 months, until finally there was no choice. Like
yeah.
He couldn't function and he had to be put down. And then she came to me for a session and she said, I just never want to go through that again. That was so horrible. I can't believe I did that. And I talked to him and I said, well, he wants you to learn from this. And he's saying that your other dog will give you a sign. So we talked to the other dog. The other dog did this. I can't remember what the sign was. It was like not eating dinner 3 nights in a row or some very concrete sign, so that she would know when it was time. And sure enough, I heard from her a few months later on Facebook, and she said, thank you so much. It helped. It worked. And she didn't suffer. And I had to put her down, but I understood, So she needed that type of sign. Now, notice that both of those animals were put to sleep, and it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
Animals, getting put to sleep is no different from dying of a natural cause, dying of an accident. I mean, it's just another method that the animal chooses. Yeah. I don't run into animals saying, I shouldn't have been put to sleep, or why did you do that horrible thing? But I run into tons of people who are like, I can't believe I did it. I feel terrible. I've been feeling guilty for 15 years. And then we talked to the animal, and he was like, no, that was the right decision. I was all done. My body wasn't working, and I needed help.
Yeah.
So euthanasia is really just one of many choices according to the animals. Remember, the animal's choosing how it happens. So you may think you figured out the right way with Pesky, but it wasn't really you.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, because she was fine the day before. She was fine. We wake up. It was a Sunday, and it was just like, I'm checking out today.
Yeah, all done, all set.
The interesting thing you talked about, maybe if someone's getting hit by a car or something, that cry, that takes place before. Pesky, just maybe seconds or maybe it was a minute before she stopped breathing, let out this like one cry. She was quiet the whole morning, let out this one, and I was wondering what was going on at that moment. Was it her like hanging on?
No.
What do you think
that was?
It's
a really good question, because I can't tell you how many people say to me, I felt like it was the right decision. We took her to the vet, or she was just about to cross over my arms, and then I got a big burst of energy and a big sound or a big bark or
Yeah.
squiggling around in my arms. It happens all the time, and I mean, and it's really cool what it is. Obviously, I don't feel upset about it. I think
Yeah.
it's really cool. The you know how we talked about if an animal's crossing slowly and their energy kind of tethers in a balloon over them, and you have to cut that cord. It's the same kind of thing. There needs to be a big burst of energy in order to get that soul out of the physical body.
Sure.
So this is what you're witnessing, but the thing is, we as humans, we see it and we're like, oh my God, I did the wrong thing. You really wanted to live. Everybody
Yeah.
freaks out, but it's really that burst in order to get out.
Yeah. You know, people should notice, and I hope they do, take notice of your demeanor in talking about this. I mean, to us, it's a very sad event. I'm sure you've lost pets. It's a very sad event.
Yes.
But in that way, because of our loss. But
Yep.
for them, and this is what you experience, you have that wonderful gift, really, to have experienced this with them. And I think anybody who has experienced the loss of a pet with you, when you're working with them, gets to experience this as well, is that it is a beautiful event. It's very natural, and the timing is perfect. I mean, pets are only with us for a short time, and so it's not a sad thing the way you experience it,
Yeah.
and the way that they communicate it to you even afterwards. That this is just a beautiful, very natural thing that we're all going to go through. And I just think it's wonderful for people to take notice when you talk about it. You are smiling, you have a smile on your face, and it's not like, oh, yeah, it was horrible. I have this story I'm going to tell you. It was horrible. It's not about that at all, is it?
No.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say quickly about that is that when I ask the animals about it, they just consider death to be the next step.
Yeah.
Because the soul keeps going. It's just, all right, I've completed my work here, I've done my stuff with my humans, and I'm graduating and moving into the next school.
Sure.
They are not attached to it. In fact, the only negativity I've run into with animals about death is that they're concerned about, okay, I'm going to cross over in the next 2 months or so. I'm really worried about how Judy's going to handle it.
Right.
We've got to. I want to start preparing her. So they'll be concerned for their humans, but for themselves, it's as natural as going to the bathroom. It's just, but it's more exciting than going to the bathroom.
Really? Well, for some people, maybe. All right. Well, so, we compare the crossing over of people with, crossing over of animals, and I can see that there's some differences there, but there's a lot of similarities. Is there ever anything that's similar to to a deathbed vision, where we hear about deathbed visions, where I'll just use the example of, an elderly person, is getting ready to pass, and they actually see their loved ones in spirit coming to welcome them home, sort of thing. Do you think that ever happens with pets, or is it sort of a lonely type of transition?
It's yes, but no. So what happens is, let's say I'm speaking with a pet, and I'm going by all this that I'm speaking about me speaking with pets because I'm not there for a lot of the actual passing.
Right.
But what will happen is I'll be talking, all right, so you're about ready, you want your death to go like this, we're kind of planning it out, talking with the animal's human, and then the animal will say, and we'll list off so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and this dog and that cat, and we'll say, they're all here ready for me to come. So it's not like a deathbed vision, it's more like they're so in touch already that they already know who's waiting for them. Which is, I think, a really cool thing, because not only does it help the animal be just comfortable, like, oh yeah, they're over there waiting for me, but it comforts the human to know that those beings, whether they're human or animal, are waiting as well.
All right. Well, that's interesting. In listening to you talk, I mean, it's obvious that animals are much more connected than we are as people, at least most of us. And they come from such a higher perspective. And I think so many people are used to thinking of pets as a lower species of some sorts. The way you talk, it's just the opposite. They should be our gurus. That's what it seems like. Is that really the way it works?
Yep, you're absolutely right. It's that they're here as our teachers. And well, you know what it is. Think of it like the animals are here to be in service to humans. Now, a lot of people view someone who's in service to them as lower than them. Going to a restaurant and treating the waiter, the lowly waiter, and not tipping them well because they're servicing you. There's a lot of people out there who think like that. Yeah. But it's a big deal to say, I'm going to dedicate myself to serving you. Yeah. This is what light workers do all the time, and it's also what animals are doing. I'm going to dedicate myself to serving humans, but it's a choice they've made. It's not they're lower and they're trying to get up to our level. They're actually trying to help us, and what they're trying to help us do is learn unconditional love. If you look at animals, that's what they open in humans. They do it through many, many different ways, but that's what they bring out in humans. So this is not a lowly, oh, he's my companion and I love him so much. This is really, animals have the potential to open up people's hearts in ways that many people avoid at every turn.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Because I don't think there's a lot of people who really think of their pets in that way. And certainly,
I meet a lot of people who do.
Yeah, I'm sure. Your perspective is a little different than most people's, I think. But I think if all of a sudden we could start to look at our animals in that way, it changes our relationship. No question about it. To think of them in that way. But the other thing, which is related to this, like going back to that question about deathbed visions. So it sounds, because they have this higher perspective, which is a higher perspective all the time, therefore they don't need to have deathbed visions because they're more in connection with the spirit world, we'll say, than we are as humans, because we have this sort of I don't know, it's like our memory of that sort of thing gets erased at a certain point in our childhood. I don't know. But animals never really lose that. What's that?
Humans have so if we have a curtain between the other side.
Curtain,
and
great
a
word.
Curtain, we humans have a much thicker curtain than animals. Animals' curtain is pretty much see-through. It's still there, but it's see-through, so they can hang out in both planes a lot. Yeah. They connect with, I meet a lot of people who say, well, does he miss, Chewy, who died 3 years ago? I think he misses Chewy. And I'll talk to the animal, and I was like, oh, Miss Chewy's here like 5 times a week. I don't miss Chewy. Chewy's kind of annoying. So, they're just in and out, back and forth very easily. We humans, since we're working on learning unconditional love, and we're learning it through, let's say, having challenges as humans, yep, that curtain has to be thicker.
Yeah.
So animals can do it much more easily. So you can see how with a thinner curtain, crossing over is not going to be as big of a deal to them.
Right.
It's just a shift in the energy.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about after-death communication. There's a great book out there called Hello from Heaven by Bill and Judith Guggenheim. And they talk about all the signals and signs that people send us from the spirit world to try to let us know that they're there. And I wondered if pets do this sort of thing as well. Do they try to send us signs and signals to let us know that they're around us?
Yeah, they do. They do it all the time. And I'll go over some of the signals, but first I want to say that it's only successful if their human is in a good space about their passing.
Okay.
If the human is holding on to their energy, if the human is stuck in that grief, and sometimes I meet people who want closure on their pet passing, and I'll connect in with them, their energy, the pet, the soul of the pet, and I'll get, all right, this feels like it's happened like last week. And they'll say, no, this happened 14 years ago because they haven't moved. Yeah. I mean, just picture holding that energy so tight that every day they're keeping that wound so open. So if someone's in that type of position, they're not going to be able to receive messages very well.
Yeah.
and we can talk about that more in a minute if you want to, but the messages, let's say it's somebody who's like, I miss them and I love him, but they're in a more balanced place with it. They're kind of moving forward. They accept that he's crossed over, etc. If it's someone in that type of balanced place, they send messages in some of the same ways that humans will send messages from the other side. And that's, a popular one would be a bird who's crossed over, and for no reason whatsoever, suddenly one of the bird's feathers is in the middle of the room. That's I think that's cool. Or the dog's toy shows up. Sometimes they'll get messages through by their name being repeated several times. So you'll be watching TV and you'll hear Rudy, and then you'll be reading a book and you'll read Rudy, and then half an hour later someone talks about their friend Rudy, and it's just a way of saying, hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
They are very effective at getting messages through, but we have to be in the right place to receive the messages. And if we're not as people, then it can be very frustrating, because it's like, I want to see.
Yeah.
One of the most effective ways that animals can get their messages through from the other side is actually dreams. And a lot of people, even the people who've been in grief for 14 years, they'll get like a dream in which the animal shows up and says hi, or they're just petting the animal, just a quick little togetherness, and that's the whole dream.
Yeah.
But that's about all they can get through, because that human has all that grief. But the dreams is a really popular way they bring their messages through.
That's great. I know with people, dream visitations like that, usually they say that the dream is much more vivid than their other dreams. Like, it's like, and it's something that if they had it 2 years ago, they remember it as if they had it last night. They're easy to remember. Probably the same thing, you think, or?
I haven't experienced that. I've experienced it. I mean, because think of it this way: for a human to come through in a dream,
yeah,
because the veil is so thick and it's a human's energy, it's just, there has to be a lot more energy behind it, which to me feels like it would make the dream more vivid. For an animal to do it, it's not as big of a deal. So it can kind of feel more routine. I'd love to say, yes, it would be this powerful visual thing, but I haven't heard that. The animals, they come through in kind of a regular dream. But if they show up, you pretty much have to trust it.
Yeah, that's great. But I see. So there's a theme here that's going on, and again, it just keeps going back to the fact that the animals are always somewhat connected to the spirit world, even while they're here. So everything's easier, even their transition back, and then, like you say, their ability to communicate once back in the spirit world, because it's almost as though they never really left there. At least most of them. As a medium, what do you communicate? I know you communicate with animals who are living as well as past. But when you're communicating with animals who are past, what are the typical things that they want to communicate to their owners, their loved ones still here?
A lot of times it'll have to do with the work that they were helping their human do. And it will be, hey, you're doing better with your anxiety, or hey, so you got a new job and it feels good. They kind of want to let their human know, I've been watching, and give them a little update. They basically want the human to know, I've been around, I love you, I see what you're doing a good job. They want to give messages of encouragement.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that it's always the human who wants to communicate with the pet on the other side. I don't have pets knocking in my head saying, I've got to tell her something. You know how other mediums working with humans, the human shows up while they're going to the bathroom or something, the deceased loved one, oh, I've got the message, okay, and they've got to get the message out. Animals don't work that way. It's us as humans. We're so connected and often so worried that we're the ones seeking out the messages, whereas the animals kind of sit in that place of, hey, love, and I'm here, and okay, you want to talk? Cool, we'll talk.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whether it be a private reading or if a medium's on stage giving, random readings to people in the audience, obviously there's a lot of spirits who are trying to get through to someone who's a medium who's on stage.
Yep.
But when they're giving readings, I've seen this so many times that the medium will say, oh, a little border collie just ran in front of me.
Yeah.
They're not trying to
Right.
impress upon any
Right.
messages. Just, hey, look, I'm here.
Yeah,
Notice me, I'm here. Just
exactly.
let them know I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
You're totally right.
They're so much more relaxed, aren't they?
Well, they're just not all caught up in all that human stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny because animals can understand everything that we know, do, say, feel, hear,
Yeah.
but they also know not to bother with a lot of it.
It's fascinating to me. I love the message that's getting through in this interview. So, all right. So, we know that you and other mediums can connect with animals in spirit. Can anyone you talked about this at the beginning, can anyone, even if we don't feel as though we have that ability, do we have the ability to connect with our deceased pets in the afterlife?
Yes, everybody has the ability to do it. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out a way that works for you, learning a technique, because most people can't just from scratch start doing it.
Yeah.
Because we're human and we put up little blocks like, I can't just do that.
Right. Yeah.
So it feels good to have someone say, all right, do step 1, step 2, step 3.
Right.
But everybody can do it. The only people I run into who can't do it are people who have like a learning type problem. They don't believe they can do it, so they are not settling their brain down enough. You know how I keep talking about you have to be clear? I was talking about not full of grief but clear. If someone's not clear or grounded, they're not going to be able to do it. So there have been a couple people in the years of me teaching people to do it who just couldn't sit still for 15 minutes to get the information. So it was kind of like they couldn't even start the technique because their brain and their mind were so going. But pretty much everybody else can do it.
Does it make it difficult for the medium as well if someone is dealing with such deep grief for you to be able to connect with the animal, or does that not affect the reading?
It can affect the reading, but I've learned how to change that.
Yeah.
First of all, I've had to learn how to be very calm, clear, and grounded despite whatever is going on around me. A person could be having the biggest crying spell, so upset about what we're doing, and I have to remain pretty much like I am now, or the connection won't stay.
Yeah.
So, there have been times when that person's upset energy has kind of overtaken me, and I've learned how to kind of push it aside so that I can get around it and get back to the connection. But it makes me feel like, oh my gosh, this person must feel I'm heartless because here they are so upset and I'm still like this, but I have to stay like this. But a person's grief can get in the way of me doing the reading. It can get in the way of what they're receiving.
Yeah.
Which is why when I'm working with someone, I help them manage their energy, manage their grief, understand it a little bit so that it's not kind of pushing them down. Because everybody's going to go through grief when an animal passes or a human passes, when something happens like that. But there are ways to help yourself through it rather than letting it kind of take you all the way down. And at first, it's going to take everybody all the way down,
Sure.
But how do you come back from that? Helping people come back from that is actually something I love to do, because once they start to understand the bigger picture, it's cool to watch them then kind of get a glimpse of, and if I stay like this for a little bit, I can have some healing and I can get some information that really helps me.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of reasons that we grieve, but if you actually do some investigation of the afterlife on your own, like having a reading with a psychic medium and seeing that evidence, this medium telling you things that you could not possibly know about the person or the animal in spirit, the messages that are coming through, maybe about memories that, again, the medium could not possibly know. When you have that kind of evidence and you start to believe in the afterlife, or you eventually get to a knowing about the afterlife, it gives you a sense of comfort. You never stop grieving the loss that takes place, the physical loss, the companionship, those types of things. But I think a big part of the pain that comes with grief comes with just not knowing if are they in pain? I mean, these are some of the biggest questions. Are they not? Like, are they okay?
Yep.
Are they in pain? Are they still sick? Or, all these kinds of questions. Once you recognize that they're in a place of peace and love and warmth and, and joy, then I think all those aspects that cause our grief to be more painful get pushed aside. And now it's just about the loss of the physical loss, the loss of companionship, not being able to hug them and that sort of thing, be with them. But even knowing that you can talk to them and they can hear you sort of thing has got to help, I'm sure. Which brings me to one of the next questions, which is, when we think of our pets after they've passed, maybe talk to them or pray to them, do they always hear us, or is there something we need to do? Dial them up, or what needs to be done in order for them to communicate with them, even if we can't hear them?
It's funny because everybody asks that question. I'll say, call on your guides or talk to your pet or, let them know. And they'll say, well, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks you have. And that's because there's a lot of religions out there and a lot of different teachers out there who say you have to say it this way and you have to say it that way to dial into the right energy, blah, blah, blah. In my experience, you just have to have the intention. Set your intention. I want to talk to Pesky. I want to let Pesky know I love him. And send a picture or a feeling or the words to Pesky, and he'll get it. There are not special words. Perhaps there are. I'm sure there are for certain other things. But to connect in and let an animal know, hey, I'll be home in an hour, or the plan changed, or hope you're okay, we'll be back from vacation in 3 weeks, or stop touching your brother, whatever it happens to be. It's just through intention of, I want to send this message to Pesky, this is who I'm thinking of, and this is where the message is going.
No, that's cool. Can I just ask, because you kind of glanced by it earlier in something that you said, and so you made me curious. What do pets do in the afterlife? What are they doing up there?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
No.
I know what they do when they're connecting with us.
Yeah.
I know what they do when they talk about, hey, I've seen Mom, and they give us updates, but I don't have. They don't give me, there isn't, like, if you ask an animal, what do you do all the time? I'll get some laying in the sun, it's just being. It's not, I'm visiting everybody 4 times a week, and that, it's not like that. There's no scheduled thing. Right. It just feels like being. But I haven't had an animal, any animal, and you've got to know that this question's asked a lot.
Sure.
Really explain that in detail. I feel like it's something that we as humans aren't really supposed to get yet.
Yeah, it might be beyond us, our comprehension.
Like we can't understand. I get laying in the sun. Okay, probably isn't literally laying in the sun.
Yes, right, exactly.
But that's that layer they put on there so we can understand. They're trying to make it so humans understand.
They dumb it down for us.
Yeah, they pretty much do.
Yeah, okay. All right, so what can pet owners do? You talked about some things, but maybe you could just give us some basic guidelines. What can we do first to help our pets transition if we know that they're sick, or especially if we know that they're dying? Let's just say they're starting. We know maybe they're about to go. They can't control their bowel movements anymore, or whatever it may be. These little signs or big signs. What can we do to help with their transition while they're here? And then after they've passed, is there something that we can do after they've passed in any way, or do they not need our help in that way?
So with the upcoming transition, it's really individual in a sense, because it's, hey, I'd like to be here, or I'd like to do this, or I'd like these people around. But even if you can't communicate with animals like I can, you still, of course, know your animal well enough to know who he really likes, who is a calming influence, what his favorite things are, how comfortable he would be at the vet versus at home.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's really about comfort. That's what the end is.
Yep.
And it's about, now remember, since the animal plans his death, It's about the human feeling like they did everything that they could
Mm-hmm.
to feel good about the passing.
I see.
If that makes sense. It's not so much like you have to have all the right things. Oh my God, I didn't talk to Danielle, and so I didn't know if he wanted his favorite pet. It's not about that.
Right.
It's, do I feel like I did everything?
Yeah.
And if I feel good about it, and I feel okay with this passing, then that's going to be everything that the animal needs.
You know, something I learned years ago, and again, you know, what you're saying here is that there's no right or wrong. You really can't do any wrong. So don't get down on yourself if you didn't do something. But something I wasn't even aware a few years ago until I heard somebody did it. You know, growing up, it was like we dropped our pets off, you know, at the doctor. We had like a Dr. Kevorkian who just wanted to put all our pets. You know, oh, he's got a cold, put him under. You know, and I lost a lot of pets that way. But he, you know, we used to just drop them off, you know, and all of a sudden, somewhere in my adulthood, someone tells me, "Oh no, I was with him, and I held him when they gave him the shot, and you know, I had music playing." The first person who told me did everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They did it at the vet, but they had music playing, and they had this beautiful bed that they had brought for him. You know, you can go that far. Most vets will allow that sort of thing, won't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They'll allow you to bring whatever you want in the room. I haven't actually encountered anybody who couldn't bring whatever they wanted. And people will bring, you know, the big comforter from their bed because that's his favorite comforter. You know,
Yeah.
they will go all out. And I haven't actually ever heard of a vet not accepting that.
And some vets will actually come to the house. You just probably have to ask, right?
Yep. And that really, I know, you know, it's more expensive than a regular vet visit, but for some animals, actually, let's say for some humans, it would be too hard on them to bring their pet to the vet when they see their pet being visibly, physically upset. So it's going to feel better to the human and calmer for everybody to bring the vet to home.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
I didn't answer the second part of your question.
Which was after they passed.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes. Afterwards, the best thing that a person can do is actually, and you know, you're going to say, of course, but is actually work on healing themselves, work on thinking about the animal positively, work on understanding the passing, work on any guilt feelings that come up, you know, because the clearer that person is, the more the animal is going to be able to get through messages, maybe hang out, maybe continue working with that human as a guide from the other side. So it's kind of like, all right, my pet crossed, I feel bad, I miss him, but I'm going to do this in a healthy way so that we can still experience some things together and I can feel good about him and see what comes of that.
Yeah, because what I've heard from you during this whole interview is because they see the bigger picture, and they really come from a place of compassion and forgiveness for us. And they seem, I would imagine that they are more concerned about what we're going through after their passing. And so therefore, the more suffering that we have, probably the harder it is on them. And that's probably true with people as well. But, you know, the way you have described pets and their role in our lives, it seems really important that we do what we can to go easy on ourselves and not start to feel bad about all the things we could have or should have done with that pet, and just and move past it and know they're in a great place and we did the best that we could, right?
Yeah. If we're stuck in that place where we're feeling, I feel so badly, I wasn't there. You know, I wasn't there when he crossed over, and I feel so badly. I left for school or I left for work or whatever it was. I meet a lot of people who feel badly about that. The guilt carries over afterwards, and they spend so much time feeling badly that they never spend any time remembering all the good.
Yeah.
And that slows down the healing, and it slows down the animal's ability to reconnect.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I just want to say, for all those people who feel badly because they weren't there, the animal didn't want them there. That's what it comes down to. That for whatever reason, that animal felt it was better to cross over alone.
Sure. Yeah, and there could be a million reasons for that. You know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
one being thinking it was going to be more difficult on you, you know,
I ran into one recently where the whole family was so high strung
Yep.
that they all would have run around like chickens with their heads cut off if they had been there.
Yeah.
So instead, the animal, he crossed over during the night.
Yeah.
And sure, they woke up and they were really upset, but it saved them for him doing it that way, from running around like that and then
Yeah.
feeling like they didn't do the right thing. So, I mean, he did a nice thing there.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Now, one of the things that you do is animal communication, and I mentioned this in the introduction, but you're also known as a soul contract intuitive. And a soul contract intuitive is basically you use your psychic abilities to recognize what our contracts are with one another before we come into this life. So, especially the significant people in our lives, I know you can take it pretty much to anybody that we get in touch with, but certainly, our siblings and our parents and our coworkers and our lovers and spouses, whatever it may be. Those people play such a significant role in our lives. And we have contracts with them before coming into this life as to what we're going to do for them, what they're going to do for us. Did I describe that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, perfectly.
And so we do the same thing with the animals in our lives, right? So could you explain how this soul contract idea applies to our relationships with our pets, even though I know you've touched upon it throughout this whole interview?
Yeah, I pretty much touched upon it, the whole time without using the word soul contract. So it'll be easy for people to understand now.
Yeah.
It's the idea that the animal is doing everything possible to complete or work with the contract that he has with his human. So this is a contract that is put in place before the animal and the human are in their bodies, so before embodiment. And that contract says something like, this dog is going to help this person become more independent, or this cat is going to help this woman feel good about being single. I know those are similar, but they're actually very different ideas. So a soul contract will center on kind of a main theme for a person, something that they came in to work on. What I've seen is that we all have our soul purpose, which makes sense, what we came here to do, but we also have these soul lessons, things that we want to master in this lifetime. And usually the soul contract between an animal and a person addresses one of the soul lessons. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly. And so, I mean, really, this just ties together everything that you've talked about their higher purpose in our lives, and how, yes, they're serving us more than, what most of us think is that we're here to take care of our pets. And of course we are physically, but this seems to come from a more spiritual and emotional place, what you're talking about here. If can you give us an example, maybe just one example or two examples of what a soul contract with an animal, maybe even your own with one of your dogs or something is?
Sure.
You don't have to do that, but I know you shared
I can.
You shared it before. So.
And actually I want to, because here's the thing. So I've got this ability, I can connect with animals, I can communicate. You'd think I would have perfect animals, right?
Right. Right.
I don't. And here's the reason why. My animals are helping me be better. So the way that an animal will often choose to carry out a soul contract is through a behavior or a characteristic or a trait that maybe isn't perfect. So I have an animal, I have Bella. Anybody who's listened to anything I've ever done has heard about Bella. So, and Bella is an excited, happy chocolate lab, exuberant. And her soul contract with me is to help me always be the leader. To help me always, because there have been times in my life where I'll take the back seat and be like, I don't know, I'm just learning, I don't know. So when I go into that energy, exuberant Bella will start jumping on people. And she's now she's less, but she was 80 pounds for a good part of her life. So 80 pounds of chocolate lab going doing, doing right on a person, really kind of made me go, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. I had to take a look at the soul contract, had to work with my energy and how I was thinking about myself and feeling within myself. And the better I felt, the more kind of leadership I took in my own life and control and like the type A drive, you know, that go, go, go thing, the more I stood within that, the less Bella jumped. So that was her method for getting her soul contract message through to me about how I needed to be behaving in order to move forward in my life. Did that make sense?
It's amazing. It's very subtle, but what a great reminder that must be.
No, doing.
Yeah, well, in that way, yeah. But the purpose of it, yeah, you know, certainly you could go through a whole lifetime and not know why the dog is jumping on people, and so yeah, it's subtle in that when it's happening, it brings your awareness back to say, hey, you know what, you know, I shouldn't. Maybe you're being a pushover in this incident. You know, take charge, show a more leadership role in this whatever's going on here. I love that. That's excellent.
But it also, I mean, so many people think my dogs are going to be perfect, but with soul contracts in existence, I'm not perfect, so they're not going to be perfect.
Well, yeah, what would be the purpose of it, right?
Right. Why would I be here human?
Yeah.
Why would they be here?
Right. Just, you wouldn't have an animal in your life.
Right.
Yeah. And what's interesting now, I've had readings from you, and people know that underneath this video, there's a link to the article that I wrote about my readings with you, and one of the things that we did, we did a reading of spirit communication, but we also talked about soul contracts with people who are in my life. So you do the same thing with people who are in your life, and it's just as fascinating. Same concept. We're here to teach one another and help one another with different things in our lifetime goals here, or whatever it may be that we came here to do. And but one of the things I recognized, both from recognizing the soul contract with my dog and my soul contract with a relative of mine, was that it helped me understand both of them better, and gave me a bigger picture of what was going on. And so maybe we'll say with the relative, if there were things that might have annoyed me before, after having the reading with you and recognizing the big picture, and it made total sense once you brought it to my attention, all of a sudden those things were not annoying to me anymore. I had compassion for why the person behaved in that way, and treated me in the way that they did. It was such a relief. It brought such a sense of inner peace. This kind of work is really important, and I'm sure. I mean, I say that as a compliment to you. I also say it for our viewers to understand that if someone's pushing your buttons out there, there's probably a reason why. Just like Bella is jumping on people, there's a reason why, right?
Yep, and that's the place to start as well. If someone's pushing your buttons, what state are you in when they're pushing your buttons? What's going on at the time? What just happened? What's about to happen? And through that, you're going to be able to figure out what the soul contract between you and that animal is, or you and that person. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I mean, we don't all need someone to do this for us.
Right.
When I had the reading with you, there was no way I possibly thought I could do it on my own. I started doing some stuff this summer where I would go into sort of like an altered state. You might call it hypnosis, whatever you want to call it. And I would go in and I would work on my own. Well, someone was helping me with guiding me into the altered state, into the hypnotic state. Once there, we would work on some of these soul contracts that I had with other people in my life. And it was the exact same thing. Once I saw the big picture, and it was just a bird's eye view on it, all of a sudden everything changed. My relationship with that person changed. So if someone feels like they're not ready yet to try to do that on their own, I highly recommend that they call you up and get a soul contract reading with you, whether it be with people or pets. But I think sometimes they can have that reading with you, and then that leads them to later being able to do it on their own.
Yeah. And now you can see why, when we're talking about the crossing over of animals, because I have such a big picture view from the animals, it's not negative for me.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. I mean, I love to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Get the big picture.
Well, with that said, and maybe those are your final words, I didn't know if you had any final words or advice for people who are grieving the loss of a pet. anything that maybe I missed asking you about or that you think is important?
I would say for those people who are grieving the loss of their pet, it's helpful to step back and think about, was this perhaps a good time for this to happen? What is there a bigger picture, a bigger lesson I can take from this? If my pet really planned this out and decided that now was the right time, can I figure out why now was the right time? Because if you know why, it helps so much. Like, oh, I was getting a new job, I just broke up with my boyfriend, and I've started this whole new career, all this stuff was changing in my life, and my work with Josie, or whatever your animal's name, it was no longer necessary. He got me to this place, and it was no longer necessary. So there's always going to be a reason why, and if you can step back and look and explore for the why, when you start coming up with little bits of it, you're going to start feeling a little better. It doesn't mean that you won't miss your pet. No. It doesn't mean you won't feel the loss, but understanding it can help with some of the other stuff that we humans put in there along with death.
I love it. That's beautiful. I want to thank you so much. And I want to mention some of the services that you offer are intuitive consultations. And so that can be regarding just personal matters, any personal matters, kind of guidance that someone might need, direction, but also talking about soul contracts with either people or animals. You do animal communication. And again, that can be with animals who are alive or past. Either way, you do both. You do clearings, and if they read my article, I had a clearing, which was really cool. I really enjoyed that. That was new for me, so I had a clearing, sort of removing energetic blockages, right? Could you kind of describe it as that? And they can read all about this on your website. But you also do, and this is one of my favorite things, is that you do intuitive mentoring. And so you can just take average people like me who never think they could do this in the world. Well, I'll just give one example. You gave a workshop at a place that we have, which is actually where I'm sitting right now in Kennebunkport, Maine. You gave a workshop teaching pretty much the same stuff that you teach with your intuitive mentoring. I had sat through most of the workshop. I had to leave and take my dog for a walk, actually. I came back, and when I did, you were doing this test where you had photographs on the wall, and I walked in and you said, okay, Bob, what are you getting on this dog right here? Which happened to be Bella, wasn't it? It was Bella. Was it Bella?
It was on Bella.
Yeah, it was Bella. So here I am. I'm in the spotlight. I didn't know what was going on. And so I just started spouting these things off that were popping into my head. And lo and behold, I mean, like 80% of it was really accurate. I was blown away. And things, like I knew that she had been in a car accident, not a car accident. She had been hit by a car, had this trauma. There was things that I couldn't have possibly known. I am not a medium, and I'm not a psychic, but you showed me that it was possible. And I figured, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So anybody who's interested in learning these sorts of things, this intuitive mentoring that you offer, I think is just a really valuable thing. And you do it, now tell me, do you do it one-on-one, but you also do it in groups, or is it a combination?
Nope. I do it one-on-one.
Yeah?
And I just took another kind of crop of students in for the fall, winter. So they'll go through, and then I think the next group will start up in the spring.
Cool, but you do something by teleconference as well, right?
Yeah, I do classes by teleconference. So I'll get everybody together and teach them. And actually, the coolest thing about that is I'll have them do exercises in the classes. Yeah. And I'll even record the classes and have people later on buy the classes and do the same psychic exercises, and they still work.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I've had regressions, where they were like really tearful regressions, and then I'll have recorded them and I'll start listening to them later, and next thing I know, tears are running down my face while I'm listening to the damn thing. So anyways.
You're going right back into the energy.
It was great. So anyways, thank you so much for joining us here at Afterlife TV. I think people probably know, we're friends as well. I got to know you. It was well over a year that we got to know each other before I finally tested you and approved you for bestpsychicmediums.com. And I've had absolutely 100% nothing but positive feedback from the people who have used my referral to work with you in one way or another. And people People love it. So
Awesome.
That's a
That's great to
compliment to
hear.
me. That makes me look better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you. This
Good
was a lot
job.
of fun. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And we'll do it
Thank-
again. We'll talk about some other subjects sometime.
Cool. I'd love to.
Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome. Bye, Bob.
Bye now.
That's all for another fantastic Afterlife TV episode. Bob couldn't be happier. If you enjoyed this episode as much as Bob, please leave a comment on AfterlifeTV.com, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And don't forget to check out Bob's book, Answers About the Afterlife. Thanks for watching Afterlife TV.